Well, Bob, thank you so much for joining us today and flying into London for Big Ideas. I guess from our perspective, we think you've got one of the biggest procurement jobs on the planet, but we're probably some of your biggest fans here. Do you mind sharing the scale and scope of your role within IBM, just so everyone else is in the picture?
Sure. So first of all, Tanya, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. This is fantastic. I flew in a day ago, so very great to be here. I'm based in North Carolina. I'm sure you can I've lived there for 18 years, so I'm sure you can tell I've been practicing my southern accent to make sure you all could understand me. So just as a little intro to me, I've been with IBM this is my 40th year. So I actually joined in 1978. Back then, IBM sponsored me through university for a master's degree, and then I've had a really interesting, varied career for the last 40 years. 4.5 years ago, I became IBM's CPO, and the first day I joined procurement, I knew I wanted to be the CPO. I mean, for me, procurement is awesome, procurement is fun. And you know, it was interesting listening about how we attract talent. We all have a job here in a role in convincing and highlighting to the millennials and the talent that's coming in, and to our more mature workforce, how awesome and impactful procurement is. But to return to your question, I should have went into politics, but I ended up in procurement.
It's not too late.
Yeah, I know I can change, right? But from an IBM perspective, I mean, IBM does procurement for itself, and we are also a BPO. So we provide outsourced procurement to around 50 companies, including Coca-Cola and various other companies that are in there across many industries. So we actually deal with over $300 billion of spend source to pay. So very large spend, very large responsibility, a lot of fun, get to meet a lot of different CPOs, get to hear a lot about the industry and do a lot of cool things. So.
Sounds fascinating. And now that you all know Bob very well, I'm going to get straight down to business. And of course, it's going to be about Watson. We all want to know about Watson. So if you can share the experiences your team has had with Watson, and you know, the highs and the lows, and you know, I think everyone wants to know, are you actually using it, and what sort of value is it delivering?
Yeah. So firstly, for maybe anyone who is not aware of what Watson is IBM's name for our cognitive technology, which is basically a large set of APIs that are utilized to drive a cognitive digitized experience across many processes. Our process and the focus of Procurious and of us, myself as a CPO, is procurement. So what we want to do is use those APIs, which, as I say, can be applied to any industry, any function, and you know, we saw from Sophie all of the different applications that are coming, from visual, audio, to all the different natural language type APIs to make all of these things happen. But we in procurement can utilize those same APIs. So for us, what we have done is we have laid out our process end to end. So from requisitioning through to payment, or as the SAP Ariba team like to say, from source to settle. So our end to end process, we have laid it out. And we've laid out, you know, what we believe is a cognitive journey map. So what can we use AI to help us with? And so from the data, and we'll talk about this later, but in procurement, I mean, we have access to enormous amounts of data, from, you know, requests from our stakeholders, to PO data, to invoice data, to data that's both structured and unstructured. The data that's on the internet, the competitive benchmarks that's out there, the dynamic pricing that happens every day. So for us in procurement, data and data awareness are absolutely huge. So leveraging that data is very important. If you go back to what we would like to know, well, from sourcing and category management through payment of invoices and all of the things that we do, we want to use Watson, IBM's artificial intelligence repository of APIs that will help us to do things much better. And it's not that we want to replace humans, it's we want to leverage automation, and we want to leverage technology to help guide us and make better, more informed decisions. So some of the applications and we are, so to answer very directly your question, yes, we are using Watson. Are we using it extensively? As much as we can. We haven't got a fully integrated deployment yet, but we're using it for things like supplier information. We call it supplier IQ. So we are able to take information about our suppliers in certain industries. So for example, in the car rental industry, if we want to know about Hertz or Avis or National or Sixt or whatever, then we have an app that our people have on their phone, and they can type into supplier IQ, tell me about Hertz. It will tell them about Hertz. It will tell them about Hertz's competitors. It will tell them what spend we have with Hertz. It will tell them what we actually buy with Hertz, so a bi-directional relationship, so spend and revenue. It will show a comparison of the key metrics of Hertz versus its competition. So think how cool that is. Think how much time procurement professionals spend when the boss says, hey, tell me about Hertz. We have to then go onto the internet. We'll have to then go into our internal systems. How much did we spend year to date? How much did we buy from them? How much revenue did we generate from? So informatics around that supplier and all of the information and how it's doing out, which is unstructured data. So we are connecting to the web, doing web crawling. We're looking across Twitter. We're getting sentiment that's out in the industry for a real-time, dynamic, up-to-date informatics about that supplier. So that's one application that we're using, and our teams love that. And not only the teams in procurement, because now we've deployed that to our stakeholders, because they also want to know, hey, how much are we buying from these guys? I'm trying to sell them products from IBM. What's the 360 view of what we are doing here? Very, very important to us. Other areas where we are using cognitive in a very pervasive way, contracts. I mean, how many of us have hundreds of, IBM's a big company, thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of contracts? How many of our teams, when we want to know, do we have a currency clause in our contracts? How long would that take you to find out from all your buyers globally or for whatever your universe of contracts is? It takes forever. So we have what's called Watson Contracts Analyzer. And all of those contracts, whether they are digitized already, if they're not, we OCR them, as we say, optical character reading, bring them, digitize them, then we have a corpus of data that has all of the information we need. Well, what do we want to do? Well, Watson can read hundreds of millions of pages a second. Watson can do, what humans can't. It was interesting when Sophie mentioned we put a brain on a camera. But think about it. It's not one brain. It's tens of thousands of brains. It's brains on scale. That's what Watson, that's what AI, that's what all of that technology is. It's the scale and capability that we can then derive insights from. Because humans aren't stupid. They're very smart. but we only have a fixed capacity.
Well, they're underrated according to Elon Musk, aren't they?
Yeah,
Last
that's
week,
right. Yeah, and at IBM we try not to underrate our intellectual capital, our people. But anyway, going back to contracts, so what we can then do is we can say, and think how cool this is, of all my contracts, how good are they? Let's score them. Let's metricize them for risk management on metrics that matter. Do we actually have in that contract things that we can track to tell us, is our supplier meeting expectations, doing what they need to do? We can score them. We can then show them on a dashboard. We can then highlight to our buyers where there's opportunity for stronger contract terms. So we actually can compare the contracts that they have versus best of breed. Best of breed clauses in indemnification, limitation of liabilities, standard clauses, things that it would take a long time to teach an individual buyer, and to go across, tens of thousands of contracts would be really, really difficult. So that's another application area. I'd say one of the two more, and I guess I need to watch my time here, but two more. So as you actually look at the number one role of procurement, and some of you will know of Jeffrey Archer, and I really like his book, First Amongst Equals. Well, for procurement, for me, first amongst equals is value and cost takeout. There are many additive responsibilities that we have, but value, cost takeout really needs you to understand dynamic pricing. Not run a sourcing event once every 3 years and then think we've done a great job because we looked at 2 suppliers, or we had an RFQ with 3 suppliers in it. So we have a Watson infused application that we run, which is called Pricing IQ. And the role of Pricing IQ is to actually help our buyers to determine on an ongoing dynamic basis, are we getting best pricing for whatever we're purchasing, whether it be labor, which is IBM's highest spend, whether it be facilities, design and construction projects, software, whatever we are buying, we want to be able to dynamically and alert-driven help our sourcing teams to understand they're getting best value. The other area that I think which is really, really important for us is risk and risk management. If you look in today's CPO agenda, or the agenda of procurement, everyone is looking to procurement to manage the ever-growing list of regulations and controls and actual requirements that are coming from society as we change everything. Look at what's happening on GDPR. How many people are spending huge amounts of time on GDPR? Now let me mention something to you. IBM's using Watson to actually help manage our client contracts and ensure that for GDPR and our data and how we manage our data with tens of thousands of suppliers gets partially automated. So we're using it for that. But risk management, how cool would it be if we know there's going to be a climatic event where our suppliers are? Then we could take action. We could make sure we've got supply in another area. We can close the factory. We can let everyone go home. We can move things out. So IBM, and by the way, IBM, as you probably are aware, we actually purchased the Weather Channel.
Yes.
The Weather Company, excuse me. The Weather Channel is still in operation because IBM doesn't want to be a media company. We're a technology company. Maybe we'll branch out of that in the future, and that's not an indication of any of our future plans, by the way. But and my political training is also involved here.
Good.
But so we bought the Weather Company to get the data and the information, because really, folks, that's what it's all about. Data is exploding. In the last 2 years, we've generated more data since the inception of time. Think about that. It's huge. if you follow Tanya on Twitter, which I do, she probably generates like 1% of all of the data that's been generated in the and I joke, but
it's
think
quality
about
or not, yeah,
no, it's
question.
it's excellent quality, and think of how well we're all connected with all of that data. So, but moving back to risk, so risk insights, we've a Watson Risk Insights module that helps us with that. It helps us to know where our supply is. You know, we've got supply chain insights, so we know where products are, track and trace, real-time feedback on where things are happening, how to avoid, because really what we want to do is have insights that can drive outcomes for us so that we don't have disruptions in supply. We can proactively do things and take action, because information without action is a waste of time.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really good to know that, you know, there's going to be a flood, but you don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You need to know there's going to be a flood in Thailand and move your sources of supply, move your equipment, machinery in time. And time is obviously really important. So the earlier you can do that, using predictive analytics and artificial intelligence and things that the human brain, whilst great, are unable to do at scale, that's where we want to deploy cognitive and the Watson technologies, and we are doing that today. So those are some of the examples, not all of them, and I'd be happy to talk to you over a break or follow up with anyone on the other applications that we use in cognitive.
Well, hopefully you're warmed up with the fire now, because I may as well ask you for my big request, which is my big ideas, but I would love to have Watson Supply Chain Insights beamed onto Procurious and follow the sun so the people can see some of this unstructured data, because we've been talking so much about Watson and talking to your team around the world. It seems like the Weather Channel and these other sources of unstructured data are really handy, and we won't be able to tailor it to everyone, but at least around the world we'd be able to show something. Cynicism's probably a core competency or a skill of procurement professionals. So, you know, in the last year since we've been working together, I've spoken to a lot of your team around the world, and I guess one of the big insights for me on Watson, and just quickly, it's a bit of a plug for you really, is that it sits on top of a lot of existing systems and draws the data, doesn't it? Because I think there's a lot of perceptions that you have to sort of throw everything out and bring Watson in, but it's actually the capabilities to draw on your existing data.
Absolutely right, and that's a really interesting point, Tanya, so thanks for highlighting that, because we get a lot of folks that we deal with, as I mentioned, we're in the BPO business, who think they have to radically transform their systems. But you know, we're in an API world.
That's right.
And APIs allow us to connect to any system almost instantaneously and get the information that we need. In fact, one of the products that we use is analytics as a service, where we can go in to any company and rapidly, you know, understand all of their spend. We can cleanse their data and information, because the biggest problem that I've seen across the different companies that we've worked with is actually there's 2 points. They have data, but the efficacy and the actual usability of the data can be very limited. Most companies don't have standardized coding like UN SPSC or even their own codes, so they may have lots of data, but actually there's no information there. And so one of the things, the very first thing we do is to cleanse the data. I mean, even as simple as understanding how much we spend with a particular supplier. Well, in all the different countries in the world, supplier terminologies and subsidiaries and all of these different things are different. So the data doesn't automatically get aggregated. And so cleansing that data, enriching the data with Watson, you know, going out to the web, going to the unstructured areas to say, what is this? Oh, it's actually part of, you know, Seagate, it's part of whatever company, and pulling it all together taking all of that data and information and then showing it and dashboarding it to show people the opportunities for what could be strategically sourced, what could be leveraged, and what could be done is really important. But your point's spot on. We don't need everything in place to start. We can start now.
This could be a good point to reveal to everyone that Bob actually has a chief data officer. I don't want everyone to get too jealous, but I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room who would love to have a CDO. And we had the pleasure of interviewing him on one of our webinars. So what's it like? What's his role? And are you seeing an ROI on that role? Because I'm sure we'd all love to build a business case for that.
Yeah, well, I think we talked quite a lot about it, so I won't, reiterate all the points. But I mean, data really is the new natural resource. A lot of companies now have a chief data or digital officer. About 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I thought that it would be highly useful for procurement to have a procurement chief data officer. And so we invested not only in a CDO, but in a team of people that would work with him, so he would develop data science roles, analytics roles, and in fact, it has proven to be absolutely invaluable. And now that's one of the key areas that we're actually leveraging, not only for internal, but for all of our clients. And when we talk to our clients, we show them the analytics and data as a service, we show them the cleansing, we take their information, because they say to us, we show them what we have, and they say, how quickly can you do that for us? We say, we can do that, in short order, in weeks. I won't say it's minutes, because we do have to connect to the different system, and we'll come on to that. I won't start answering future questions, but yeah, that I would, if there was one thing I should say to every CPO, is understanding data, the data strategy, and how we're going to get the data that we need to bring the value and the insights that will drive value for the enterprise is one thing I would focus on immediately.
Yeah, and I mean, it's there as a resource. We did a webinar, Are You a Data Hunter or a Gatherer, which was really fun, and have a listen to. I think that the thing that stuck out for me in that interview was just how customer focused the data team was, and they were talking about how they're equipping your category managers and other leaders with the right approach and the ability to get down to business very quickly by focusing on just a couple of key metrics.
Right.
So that was really heartening. And then when we spoke to your head of learning, lovely guy in New York, Justin McBrien, I mean, I've got to tell you, some of those thoughts I had this morning were actually stolen directly from Justin, because what Justin's role is to actually lead Bob's team and train them up in the soft skills that Bob thinks are required into the future. So you are a big believer in I guess, people engaging, influencing, collaborating. He also said a couple of controversial things, that maybe procurement professionals become a bit lazy. We're just always doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a new outcome. So why did you invest in that role, and are you seeing the benefits?
Well, I think we all understand, and Sophie mentioned it as well, and you also eloquently mentioned it, Tanya, that, talent and our people are our most important assets. So if we don't spend time on them and developing them and giving them the ways to be excellent, it won't happen naturally. So what I did is, inside my team, actually appointed Justin to drive our talent development programs. Now, if you actually look a little bit broader from an IBM perspective, you probably heard Jenny Rometty, who's our CEO, talking about pathways to technology. It's called PTech. And it's very interesting, because if you look just in the US, there's more than 500,000 jobs in the technology arena that are unfilled, because we don't have the skills and the skilled people to perform those jobs. So one of the things we've been doing is working with community colleges, not just in the US, but globally, to drive programs that will bring the right skills, i.e. mathematical, analytical, statistical, data science. So the technological skills that we're going to need for the future, we're actually starting at that level, which is back from high school. And what we're also doing is not making it, let me call it, easier for entry by not having the very, I mean, in the US, it can be very, very difficult to get into full-blown colleges. So we want to have an inclusive way to do this. And there's a whole program on that, and you and I could spend half an hour just talking about P-Tech. So at the macro level, IBM's heavily invested in that. And you know, I think we've now got tens of thousands of students going through this new P-Tech program. We've already had our initial graduates, and we've ingested them into IBM. So awesome at the macro level. From a procurement level in my team, we appointed someone whose sole purpose in life is to help us develop the skills that we need for the future. Because the skills are changing. You know, we just talked about AI, we just talked about cognitive, we're talking about, you know, learning, we're talking about what needs to happen. So for us, and this is an interesting term, but AI at IBM doesn't mean artificial intelligence. It means augmented intelligence. Because what we want to do is eliminate all of the transactional drudgery that goes on. Because let me tell you, millennials, and I have two millennial sons myself, they really don't want to be, you know, data searching and data mining and spending a lot of time on mundane repetitive tasks. They want that all to come to them automatically. And so what do we want them to think about? We want them to be thinking about innovation, client relationship management, driving innovation that matters for our company, collaboration, understanding what is being fed into them, focused on logic, focused on value and outcomes, focused on agile ways of doing things. How do we do things with speed? How do we do them quickly? You know, and we're maybe going to talk about metrics and stuff, but we in procurement, I mentioned earlier, you know, first amongst equals, cost is always going to be a business imperative and value for us. But we need to get focused on user experience. We need to get focused on speed. We need to get focused on simplicity of dealing with procurement. And we measure that now in every transaction. And I really am jumping ahead here. But we measure that in every transaction. So a lot of focus on talent development, early professional hires, and also upskilling the teams that we have.
And I really sort of asked Justin, I said, what are you really doing? And I mean, it's things like active listening and really challenging the team not to go straight to RFQ all the time. And it's quite good. So that one was called Beat the Bots, which is I thought was quite interesting. One of the questions I asked Justin, I said, you know, really, what did the team think? You know, did they really want to use all these new tools? Do they really like Watson? And there was a slight pause, and he'd say, I would describe it as a warm embrace. So, you know, how has your team taken with all these new skills and even, the new tools, but even using these new skills, you know, change isn't easy. So how has that gone?
Well, you know, I'd characterize it this way. Whenever we change anything, people get a little bit worried
I'm sure
and
everyone's
defensive.
in the same boat.
So when we change is not natural. And so at IBM, we have a principle of constantly trying to reinvent ourselves and our team and drive for constant change that will, you know, help us be essential to the world. So that change and embracing change is a cultural difference that needs to come from the top down the organization. And I think So, as I mentioned, we have a cognitive journey because it doesn't happen instantaneously. And so I would say to everyone who's thinking about this, this is an investment of time, people, resources, learning. It is not, let's go cognitive and tomorrow we're up and running and people will use it. So I would say that it takes time to, train your people, to educate them. And also, cognitive and AI needs data. And it needs the data from your organization. Because you may be sourcing a unique commodity, you may be doing things in a different way. So the idea here is to get the corpus of data that you have, to ingest that, and then work with Watson or any other AI that you use. Because you see, if you think about the different eras of computing, we're basically in the third era of computing here, which is computers that learn. The first era of computing was tabulation. And then the second era of computing, like abacuses and doing all these things. The second area is computational. Well, we actually program machines to do things, repetitive tasks. Well, guess what? We're now in a new era where computers learn. We saw it on a lot of the slides. Well, but they make mistakes as well. And they make assertions that our experts, that are man and woman, so to be completely correct here, would teach Watson and AI because there are insights that it has to learn. So cognitive computing doesn't give instantaneous, accurate answers and needs to be taught and then developed. But as I mentioned, the key thing here is that, that I like this analogy about putting a brain on a camera, but we want 1 million brains on the camera. Think how compelling that is, and think how quickly that can be better than just having one brain. But you want a brain, because a brain learns, it understands, it's creative. So that brings you back to the challenge of how do you invigorate and energize your people around this? And the energization factor is, hey, we are going to remove the transactional, mundane activities and give you insights and work with you, but you have to learn how to interact with, train, assimilate the information and the data that drive the outcomes that we need.
One of the things we talk a lot about at Big Ideas is, it's one thing to have a big idea, but how do you get big ideas through big companies? Because, it really is a struggle. You can be intrapreneurial, but actually getting that change implemented can be an uphill battle. I was fascinated to meet Joanne Wright, and I've met her a couple of times, IBM's VP of supply chain. And really, Joanne kind of instigated the development of Watson supply chain from everything and everyone I've spoken to. So she went into the job and was hit with the Icelandic volcanoes, the floods in Thailand and the tsunami. Just a nice time to start a new job, wouldn't it be? And she sort of thought, wouldn't it be great if I could have my iPhone and sort of, be alerted to what I really needed to worry about and what the levers were. So, then she worked with the team and really developed this product. So, I thought how fantastic to work inside a company where you could actually get big ideas through. So what is it like to work in a company like that, and have you found that you've been able to implement your own ideas? And
so I mean, just number one, Joanne is fantastic, and she does many conferences and many speeches. She's actually Scottish, like myself. So,
there's a few
you can't have everything perfect in life. So, but she is based in New York now, and she is a real luminary in how we apply, cognitive to our supply chain in an extended manner. And so Watson Supply Chain Insights is a product that is ready to go for any company, and it helps to make transparent all that is happening and the supply chain with predictive analytics to help do those things. But coming back to your point, IBM, people may not realize this, but IBM's a technology company. So we invest $5.8 billion a year in technology and development. And last year, for example, IBM was in the US over 9,000 patents. We were number one. We've been number one for 26 years in a row. And if you take the next 6 companies and add up all the patents they had, it's still less than IBM. So we are a hugely innovative company. And it's fantastic to be part of an innovative company. And we can use that technology to develop solutions for our clients and our people and move forward and actually work with our partners. I see my good friend Justin here. He's with SAP Ariba. IBM announced a big partnership with SAP Ariba, and now we're taking Watson and infusing Watson into Ariba so that we can get much better insights around contracting, around sourcing, and around risk management. So we can take these APIs, infuse them into our base Ariba products, and make things a lot better and a lot smarter for everyone. So working in a company like that, where we have major partnerships in technology, is awesome. But and I know everyone's company's not focused on that, but that's good too, because not everyone needs to invest in the same things. It's back to Adam Smith and economies of scale. We don't want to all be investing in the same thing.
No.
So we can share that, utilize that technology. We're focused on making it, accessible and usable by our clients so that everyone doesn't need to spend $5.8 billion to get all these wonderful cognitive automated solutions.
I think it's what I was talking about earlier today is a fairly accepted concept that we're going to be, the future role of supply chain leaders or procurement leaders is going to be managing this extended network of suppliers and really building relationships. And in a way, that's one of the unique parts of your role, isn't it? Sort of building these customer-supplier relationships. Can you share a little bit more with everyone about that and maybe the skills? Do you see that as part of the future, and are there benefits to IBM in having?
Well, I'm
sure there are.
I think there's benefits to everyone in maximising that, because if you think about it, moving forward, at some halcyon point in the future, we will have cognitive tools widely dispersed. So how are we going to differentiate ourselves, and how are the best companies going to succeed? It's by relationships. It's by driving innovation. We've got a program in IBM called Supplier Enabled Innovation, where we actually don't just talk and have seminars with suppliers, but we track how many ideas they're bringing to us, how we can integrate our suppliers as early in the procurement process as possible, and actually going beyond procurement. You can actually envisage a world in the future where, procurement are purely a catalyst to bring the development teams and the line of business teams together as early as possible in the process, using all these wonderful tools so that you get the outcomes that you desire. For me, what we want to be aspiring to is, we use roughly 15,000 suppliers in IBM across all of our BPOs. What my utopian state is that every morning 15,000 suppliers wake up and say, how can I make IBM and its clients better? Not every morning me and my procurement team think, how do I communicate with 15,000 suppliers to get them to make us better? We want them to see the value and to bring innovation, and for it to be proactive versus reactive and bring all that value to us. You only get that through collaboration. You only get collaboration through trust and through, and I mean, this is a much cliched term, but no one's going to do something for you if you're not going to do something for them. For me, that's like basic, Maslow type hierarchy of needs things. You can do something for someone, at some point, they want to be working with you. So I think that's really important that we focus on that. I also think that in today's world of procurement and sales actually begin to merge together. A lot of our big clients are our big suppliers. So we call that a bi-directional relationship. And managing bi-directional relationships is a big challenge. Because we're looking for competitive products, we're looking for technology that differentiates us, but we also need clients to sell our products to. So as the procurement leaders and the CPOs and the procurement buyers in our teams, we have to manage that, I would say, Tanya, sensitively. And sensitively as we have all the data, we have all the information, we give those clients the opportunity to be our suppliers. We continue to make sure they're competitive using these cognitive tools and dynamic pricing and all of those different things. But we need to work together. And I think that's your key point.
Well, I think that's a fantastic place for us to stop. Let's work together.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
I've got lots more questions I'm prepared for, Tanya. Keep going.
Well, maybe we'll keep
I'm only
chatting
joking.
while you
I'm
get
only
a coffee.
joking.
But I think hopefully some really great topics raised for you all. You can grab Bob in the coffee room and ask you him most of the day.
I'll be here all day. I'll be here.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and please grab a coffee, and any of our speakers, just grab them during the break and have a chat. It's fairly a content-intensive day, but we'll get there.
Thank you.